My son kicked me out of his house after I cleared his debt. He threw me into the rain, suitcase in hand, like I was nothing more than an unwanted burden. My own flesh and blood. I had given him my life, my money, my soul. And when I thought I had nothing left to lose, I found something that changed everything. Something that would make him regret ever crossing me. But what I discovered next changed everything. My name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old, and my story begins long before the night I was left standing outside in the storm. It begins in the years of sacrifice that came before. The years when I gave up everything to raise my son, Daniel. I met my husband when I was only 19. He was the love of my life, but fate was cruel. He died of a heart attack before our boy turned 10. That left me alone, a young widow with one child, no savings, and no one to lean on. People whispered behind my back, telling me I wouldn't survive, that I'd end up in the gutter. But they didn't know me. They didn't know the fire inside me. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I scrubbed floors in the mornings and sewed clothes late into the night. My fingers bled from the needle, my back ached from scrubbing, but I never once complained. Because every coin I earned went to Daniel, my boy, my reason for breathing. I told myself he would grow up different, that he would have the education I never had, that he would stand tall in this world, never begging, never crawling like I had to. And for many years, I believed I had succeeded. Daniel was smart, handsome, ambitious. He was the kind of boy who made neighbors stop me in the street just to say, "Margaret, you've raised a fine young man." And I'd smile, my chest swelling with pride, because all the pain and sacrifices had been worth it. When Daniel got into university, I wept with joy. I worked overtime, sold my wedding ring, even borrowed money just to pay his tuition. I told myself it was all an investment. One day, he'd repay me with love, respect, and maybe, just maybe, the family I had always dreamed of surrounding me in my old age. And for a while, life seemed almost perfect. Daniel graduated, got a decent job, and fell in love with a woman named Lisa. She was beautiful, glamorous with perfect hair, expensive clothes, and a smile that could charm anyone in a room. At first I was delighted. My son had found happiness. Isn't that what every mother wants? Lisa and I tried to get along. I cooked for them. I knitted little blankets when they had my granddaughter, Sophie. I wanted to be useful, to show that I wasn't just an old woman taking up space. But from the beginning, I could sense it. The coldness in Lisa's eyes, the way she looked at me, like I was some shadow from the past. She didn't want haunting her perfect modern home. She never said it outright, not then. But I heard the whispers. At night, when they thought I was asleep, Lisa would say things like, "We need more space, Daniel. Your mother's always around. Don't you want to live freely without her watching us?" And Daniel, he didn't defend me. He stayed silent. Still, I brushed it off. I told myself it was just tension. That Lisa would come to accept me, just as Daniel always had. I swallowed my pride and kept smiling, kept cooking, kept helping with Sophie. Because family is worth the sacrifice. Always. But cracks began to show. Daniel started spending money recklessly. Fancy cars, designer clothes, vacations he couldn't afford. I tried to warn him. I begged him to save, to think about his future. He brushed me off, saying, "Mom, times are different now. Don't worry so much." But I did worry, because I could see the storm coming. And soon enough, it hit. Daniel fell deep into debt. He borrowed money from banks, from friends, even from dangerous people. I found out only when a man in a black suit came knocking at our door demanding payment. That was the day I realized my son was drowning, and he was about to drag me down with him. I confronted him that night. I asked why he hadn't told me, why he was risking everything he had built. He broke down, sobbing like the little boy I once rocked to sleep. "Mom, I didn't want you to see me fail. I didn't want you to know I couldn't handle it." My heart shattered. I had spent my whole life protecting him, and here he was, broken, begging. I couldn't turn him away. I couldn't let him lose the house, the family, the life he had built. So, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I saved him, again. I emptied my savings account, the money I had tucked away for my funeral, for emergencies. I sold my jewelry, the gold bangles my husband had given me when we married. I even mortgaged the small property my parents left me. Piece by piece, I gave away everything I had built over 70 years. And with that, Daniel was free. His debts cleared, his house saved, his reputation intact. For a moment, I felt relief. He hugged me, tears streaming down his face, and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. I'll never forget this. I promise, things will be different now." I believed him. God help me, bro. I believed him. For a short while, life seemed calm again. Lisa smiled more. Daniel acted grateful. Sophie hugged me every morning before school. I told myself I had done the right thing, that maybe this was the turning point where my son would finally grow into the man I always hoped he'd be. But beneath the calm surface, something darker was brewing. I saw the way Lisa looked at me, sharper now, almost calculating. I noticed Daniel avoiding eye contact when I spoke. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, my gut screamed at me. Something was wrong. The whispers at night grew louder. I overheard Lisa again. "Now that we're free, Daniel, we need to think about us. Your mother can't stay here forever. She's holding us back." This time, Daniel didn't stay silent. His voice was low, but I caught it. "You're right. We'll figure something out." My blood turned to ice. I wanted to believe I had misheard. I wanted to believe my son, the boy I gave everything for, would never betray me. But I was wrong, terribly wrong. And what happened next? It shattered me to my core. But what I discovered next changed everything. The night Daniel finally showed his true colors is burned into my memory like fire on skin. It started small, little things. He stopped joining me for dinner. He stopped asking how I was feeling. Lisa's eyes grew colder, sharper, as if she had already won a war I didn't even know I was fighting. One evening, I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew. The smell filled the house. Carrots, potatoes, beef simmering slowly, just the way Daniel loved it as a boy. I used to cook that dish every time he came home from school, crying because other boys had teased him for not having a father. That stew was comfort. It was love. But when I called him and Lisa to the table, Lisa wrinkled her nose and whispered, not quietly enough, "Old people food. I can't stand the smell anymore." Daniel laughed. He laughed. "Don't worry, babe. We'll order takeout later." I froze, spoon in hand. My chest tightened. The stew boiled over, hissing like my anger. But I said nothing. I swallowed it like I had swallowed so many other insults. And then came the day everything crumbled. I was folding laundry when Daniel walked in. His face was serious, but his eyes avoided mine. Lisa stood behind him, arms crossed, lips curled into the faintest smirk. "Mom," Daniel said, his tone flat, "we need to talk." My heart sank. I knew. I didn't know the words, but I knew. He cleared his throat. "Lisa and we've been talking. We think it's time for you to find your own place." The basket slipped from my hands, clothes scattered across the floor. What? What did you say?" Lisa stepped forward. "You've been living here too long. We're married now. We need our privacy, our space. You're in the way." "In the way?" My voice cracked. "I'm your mother. This is my family." Daniel winced but didn't look up. "Mom, don't make this harder. You've helped us enough. You deserve peace. Maybe a nursing home or the garage. At least until you figure something out." The garage. The cold, dusty garage where tools rusted and spiders crawled. My son wanted to send me there like some broken chair he no longer used. I felt the air leave my lungs. My knees trembled. "Daniel, I gave you everything. I saved your house. I gave you my life." Finally, his eyes met mine. But they weren't the eyes of the little boy I raised. They were hard, distant, almost cruel. "And I'm grateful, but I have my own family now. You need to let go." Lisa's smile widened, triumphant. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to remind him of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every penny I gave. But no words came, only silence, and then it happened. The final blow. A week later, on a stormy night, Daniel packed my suitcase himself. He placed it by the door, rain hammering the roof above us. Lisa held Sophie in her arms, whispering into her ear as if I were a stranger. "Mom," Daniel said coldly, "it's time." My hands shook as I clutched the handle. "Daniel, please, please not like this. I have nowhere to go." He opened the door. The rain lashed against my face. His voice was sharp. "You'll figure something out. Don't ruin this for us." I turned to Sophie, my granddaughter. Her big eyes looked at me with confusion. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but Lisa tightened her grip, pulling her close. The door slammed behind me. Just like that, I was alone. The rain soaked my clothes, my bones, my soul. I dragged the suitcase through the mud, every step heavier than the last. Neighbors peeked from their windows, watching the scene unfold. I could see their pity, their whispers. "That's Margaret. Her son threw her out." Humiliation burned hotter than the storm. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I rented a small, filthy room in a boarding house across town. The walls smelled of mildew. The mattress was stained. Rats scurried in the corners at night. I sat there, clutching a single photo of Daniel as a boy. His smile so bright, his arms wrapped around my neck. I wept until my throat was raw. How could he? How could the boy I raised with blood and sweat betray me like this? But the cruelty didn't end there. Daniel blocked my number. Lisa ignored my calls. Even Sophie, she didn't answer my messages. Whether Lisa kept her from me or whether she chose to forget, I didn't know. That silence was worse than any storm. Days blurred into weeks. I pawned my last possessions just to buy food. I felt like a beggar, invisible, a discarded relic of a past no one wanted. One evening I saw them. Daniel and Lisa walking out of a restaurant, laughing, dressed in expensive clothes, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't given up my entire life to save them. I hid in the shadows, trembling with rage, my hands balled into fists, my nails dug into my skin until I bled. I wanted to run up, to scream, to demand answers, but I stayed hidden, my heart pounding like a drum. The betrayal wasn't just that they had thrown me out, it was that they had erased me, as though I had never existed. I stumbled back to my room that night, collapsed onto the mattress, and whispered into the dark, "God, why? Why me? Haven't I suffered enough?" But then, something shifted. As I dug through my handbag, searching for a tissue, I found a bundle of papers I had almost forgotten about. Receipts, legal documents, mortgage agreements, every signature I had made to clear Daniel's debt, every record that tied me, legally and financially, to the house he now lived in. My tears stopped, my breath caught, my hands trembled, not with grief this time, but with realization. I wasn't powerless, I wasn't finished. Daniel thought he had won. Lisa thought she had pushed me out for good. But they were wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. Because in that moment, staring at those papers, I knew one thing. They had taken everything from me. And I was going to take it all back. Rock bottom isn't a fall, it's a burial. And for weeks, I was buried alive. The boarding house was my coffin. Damp walls pressing in on me. The smell of mold suffocating me. Nights spent staring at the cracked ceiling, waiting for dawn that never brought relief. I had nothing. No family, no money, no dignity. My own son, the boy I once rocked to sleep when storms frightened him, had thrown me into the rain like garbage I barely ate, a piece of bread, a cup of tea maybe once a day. My bones ached, my heart ached more. Sometimes I sat on the floor with Daniel's childhood photo clutched to my chest. In that photo, his smile was so pure. His eyes lit up when he looked at me. I whispered to it in the dark, "Where did you go, my boy? Where did that child disappear?" But photos don't answer. They only remind you of what you've lost. One morning, I woke up to pounding on my door. The landlady, she wanted rent. I had nothing left to give. She sneered, muttered about kicking me out, and walked away. The humiliation burned hotter than fire. I sank to my knees after she left. Tears blurred my eyes. My hands shook as I reached for my handbag, the only possession I had guarded like treasure. Inside, tucked in a hidden pocket, were the papers: receipts, contracts, legal forms. I had forgotten I still carried them everywhere, as if they were a lifeline. I spread them across the bed. My eyes scanned the words: mortgage agreement, transfer of payment, lien release, all signed in my name. My savings, my property, my life poured into Daniel's rescue. And then I saw it, the line in the mortgage deed that changed everything. Ownership was still partially in my name. The house, the very house Daniel and Lisa lived in, the house they had thrown me out of. For a long moment, I just stared. My breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. Then, slowly, something shifted inside me. The grief drained away. The humiliation hardened into something sharper. Anger. Cold, precise anger. He thought I was weak. He thought I was done. But he had forgotten every document, every receipt, every coin had passed through my hands. I wasn't powerless. I still had cards to play. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't pray. I planned. The next morning, I went to the bank. My old friend Martin still worked there, though he was only part-time now. When he saw me walk in, his eyes widened. "Margaret, my God, what happened to you?" I told him everything. Every word spilled like poison from my lips. He listened, jaw tightening with rage, and then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You know, you may have more power than you think." He pointed at the documents, explained the details, confirmed what I had already suspected. That house wasn't Daniel's alone. Legally, I still held rights. From there, the plan took shape, piece by piece, like stitching a quilt. I sought advice from Martin, then from an old neighbor's brother who had been a lawyer. Quietly, secretly, always careful not to let words slip back to Daniel. At night, I studied the papers by candlelight, tracing every signature, every clause, memorizing them as if they were scripture. Each day, I grew stronger, not in body. My bones still ached, my hands still shook, but in spirit. The more I learned, the more my humiliation turned into something else. Resolve. Daniel thought he had buried me. He thought I would fade into the shadows, forgotten, erased. But he had underestimated me. I had lived too long, fought too hard, survived too much to bow down now. So I made a promise to myself, whispered into the dark like a vow carved in stone. "I will take back everything you stole, and when I do, you'll know the pain of losing everything you thought was yours." For the first time in months, I felt alive again. Not as a victim, not as a mother begging for scraps of love, but as a woman sharpening her blade. The papers were my weapon, the law was my shield, and my silence would be my disguise. Because revenge is not loud, revenge is quiet, patient, and mine had just begun. Revenge doesn't arrive with thunder. It creeps in like a whisper. The first step was silence. I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't storm into the house demanding answers. No, I waited, I watched, I collected. With Martin's help, I filed quiet notices, documents that Daniel never bothered to read because he assumed his old mother had no fight left in her. Every clause, every detail was like a thread I wove into a net, and Daniel was walking straight into it. Meanwhile, I played my part. When I occasionally ran into neighbors, I smiled weakly, said I was staying with friends. Let them think I was fading away. Rumors spread that I had nothing left. Perfect. Daniel believed it too. Then came the second step, exposure. One afternoon, I visited the lawyer Martin had introduced me to, a sharp, no-nonsense man named Harris. He reviewed the documents, his brows arching higher with every page. Then he looked up at me and said one word that lit fire in my veins. "You own it." Half the house Daniel and Lisa had been parading as their kingdom, throwing lavish dinners in, boasting to neighbors about. Half of it was mine. We moved quietly. A notice was drafted, served formally. Harris smirked when he handed me the copy. "This will shake him." And shake him it did. The call came that evening. Daniel's voice, frantic, almost a shriek. "Mother, what is this? Some kind of joke? You can't just—" I cut him off. My voice was steady, calm, almost chilling. You kicked me out of that house, but it was never yours to throw me from. For once, Daniel was silent. Step 3. Humiliation. A week later, Harris arranged a formal inspection. I walked through the front door, not as a beggar, not as a mother begging for shelter, but as an owner. Neighbors peeked from their windows as I stepped onto the porch. Lisa's painted smile faltered when she opened the door and saw me standing tall beside the lawyer. Inside, I moved slowly, deliberately. My hands brushed the walls, the banister, the kitchen counter. My house, my history. Every corner whispered with memories they had tried to erase. Lisa hissed at Daniel in the kitchen. Not realizing I could hear, "I told you this would happen. You should have finished it properly." Finished it properly, as if casting me out like trash hadn't been enough. My jaw tightened, but I kept my calm smile, because patience was the sharpest blade. Step 4. Reclaiming. Through legal maneuvering, Harris froze Daniel's ability to refinance or sell. Creditors came knocking. The very debts I had once rescued him from began circling again, this time with nowhere for him to hide. I didn't have to lift a finger. The system itself dragged him down. At night, Daniel called, sometimes begging, sometimes raging. "Please, Mom. You don't understand. They'll take everything." But I remembered his voice the night he kicked me into the rain. Cold, merciless, unrecognizable. So I said only, "Now you know what it feels like to have nothing." And then I hung up. Step 5. Exposure to the world. Harris arranged for the matter to go public at a community hearing. People who had whispered about me now heard the truth, that the woman they thought discarded was the rightful owner, betrayed by her own blood. Gasps filled the room as the documents were read aloud. Daniel's face flushed red. Lisa's eyes darted like trapped animals. For the first time, they weren't the golden couple. They were parasites exposed under bright light. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply stood, calm and dignified, as the truth spoke for me. That silence was more powerful than any scream. And then came the final step. I reclaimed the house. Daniel and Lisa were given notice. The look in my son's eyes when he realized he was no longer in control. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Fear of me. The day they moved out, I stood on the porch, watching them drag their suitcases down the path. Lisa muttered curses under her breath. Daniel avoided my gaze, shoulders slumped, a broken man. I should have felt pity. I should have felt sorrow, but I felt only justice. The house was mine again, not just in name, but in truth. And as I stepped back into the living room, the sunlight spilling across the floor, I whispered to myself, "This is what you tried to take. This is what I took back." But little did I know, the story wasn't finished, because what Daniel did next would test me even further. The house was quiet again. For weeks after Daniel and Lisa left, I wandered through the rooms like a ghost returning to her body. The walls still carried their perfume, their chaos, their greed. But slowly, those stains lifted. I opened the windows wide. I let the air and sunlight reclaim what had been poisoned. One morning, I stood in the kitchen with a cup of tea. The same kitchen where I had once baked cookies for Daniel when he was a boy. The same kitchen where Lisa had sneered at my presence. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't lonely anymore. It was peace. Daniel tried to call me once more. I let the phone ring. His voice on the answering machine was broken, pleading. "Mom, I'm sorry, please. We have nowhere else to go." I listened, but I did not answer, because forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. I had forgiven him long ago, perhaps for my own sake, but trust? That was gone forever. The neighbors began stopping by again. Mrs. Carver from across the street brought over a pie and whispered how proud she was of me. Mr. Latham tipped his hat, saying, "About time justice came around." The same people who once pitied me now respected me. Not because I was cruel, not because I won, but because I survived. And survival, when the world wants you forgotten, is the greatest victory of all. I started filling the house with new life. Flowers in the garden, fresh paint on the walls, Laughter again, this time from friends, from my bridge group, from the women who had stood by me when Daniel turned me out. My house was no longer a tomb of betrayal, it was my sanctuary again. Sometimes at night, I sat by the window, watching the empty street. I wondered if Daniel thought of me, if he understood what he had lost. Not the house, not the money, but me. Because wealth can be rebuilt, homes can be found, but a mother's love? Once destroyed, it cannot be restored. And that was my final revenge. Not the legal papers, not the public humiliation, not even the house. It was knowing that Daniel, my son, would carry forever the knowledge that he betrayed the one person who would have loved him no matter what. That emptiness would follow him longer than any debt collector ever could. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to chase him down. All I needed to do was live. So I did. And that is why, when people ask me how I survived betrayal so deep, I tell them this. Strength doesn't come from holding on. It comes from knowing when to let go. Daniel lost everything because he thought I was weak, but I gained everything back the moment I realized I wasn't.